The Greeks had built a machine that captured the cosmos, but it was a fragile, singular object, accessible only to a few.
What was needed was a way to store and preserve this knowledge, to make it survive the ages. In the early 3rd century BCE, a project of unprecedented ambition emerged in the Egyptian city of Alexandria. It was an attempt to gather all the world's knowledge in one place. If the cave paintings of Lascaux were the first hard drives, then Alexandria was the first data warehouse of civilization.
The Library of Alexandria was far more than an archive. It was an attempt to gather, organize, and systematize the entire knowledge of the known world.
Historians estimate that between 400,000 and 500,000 papyrus scrolls were housed here. It was an ancient data center covering every field of knowledge.
And the ambition was universal. Alongside Greek works, they collected Egyptian, Hebrew, and Buddhist texts. It was the first multicultural knowledge repository.
This was the Greek principle of techne, extended to the scale of an empire, an architecture of knowledge designed to map the known world. The librarians of Alexandria were the first data scientists. They didn't just store scrolls. Callimachus created the Pinakes, the first comprehensive library catalog in history. He invented a system of classification that allowed scholars to navigate the collection.
They created text-critical editions. They categorized and cross-referenced. In Alexandria, knowledge was not just stored, it was linked.
This is the Gestell in its earliest form, the drive to order the world and make knowledge available as a structured, standing reserve for human understanding. But the library was not just a warehouse of scrolls. It was a factory of insight. Its third chief librarian, Eratosthenes, proved this by measuring the entire earth using nothing but a well, a stick, and a moment of pure techne. He knew that on the summer solstice, the sun shone directly down a well in Syene, casting no shadow. At the same moment in Alexandria, an obelisk cast a measurable shadow. The angle was 7.2 degrees, exactly 1/50th of a circle. By applying this simple geometric ratio to the distance between the two cities, he calculated the Earth's circumference with astonishing accuracy. This was not just geography. This was the first global coordinate system, a grid that linked every place on Earth. It was the conceptual ancestor of every GPS satellite and every spatial algorithm that powers modern AI. Eratosthenes showed that the world could be captured in a single, elegant system. The Library of Alexandria was not just storing knowledge, it was creating the very frameworks through which we still understand reality. But this centralization of knowledge had a fatal weakness. Papyrus, the storage medium of the time, had a limited lifespan, about 100 to 300 years. It was extremely vulnerable to humidity, fire, and human neglect. The repeated destructions of the library over the centuries revealed the immense vulnerability of a purely centralized system. When the library finally disappeared from history, an irreplaceable part of the ancient source code was permanently lost. The loss of Alexandria taught humanity a bitter lesson about the fragility of central data storage. The knowledge was saved, but only for a time. Alexandria had created the perfect monument to knowledge, but a total concentration of data creates a single point of failure. Centralized order breeds its own fragility. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the loss of ancient urban centers, the remaining knowledge threatened to disappear in the chaos of the early Middle Ages. The rescue came not through a new giant center, but through a radical decentralization of storage. The the medieval monasteries. What the Ptolemies had centralized in Alexandria, the monks now distributed across Europe. In the scriptoria of monasteries like Monte Cassino, Bobbio, Fulda, or the Irish communities at Clonmacnoise, the intellectual heritage of antiquity was systematically preserved. This was poiesis in practice, a distributed, organic creation that could survive the collapse of any single node. But while the knowledge in European monasteries was protected and preserved for theological study, its computational potential remained dormant. The source code of antiquity had been saved from physical oblivion, but it was not yet running on an active mathematical processor. While the West preserved the code, in the East, the true mathematical activation took place. The baton of knowledge was passed to a new dynamic movement, the scholars of Baghdad. In our next episode, we travel to Baghdad, to the glittering center of the Abbasid Caliphate, where the first software factory of civilization was built. If you're enjoying this journey, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was the Library of Alexandria the first attempt to create a universal database?